Good morning to all of you. I think robotic surgery is a very, very superior form of minimally invasive surgery, and it is here to stay. And people who are going to start using a robo, I think, should push it if you can. So I think minimally invasive surgery like laparoscopy is here to stay. After the GOG LAP2 trial for endometrial cancer, it has been found that certainly minimally invasive surgery is superior in terms of blood loss, transfusion, hospital stay, perioperative and postoperative complications, earlier return to work, so on and so forth. But minimally invasive surgery does have a lot of problems in the sense that we have maybe 20 to 30% of gynecologists or gyne-oncologists taking to laparoscopy, vis-a-vis a much higher percentage taking on robotic surgery, because the learning curve is so much less, and it is so much easier to transit from an open surgery to a robotic surgery. So the disadvantages of laparoscopy, namely the steep learning curve, lack of depth of perception, the camera instability. I think this is a problem we all have as laparoscopic surgeons. You all the time asking the cameraman to move to your site of field, operative field, but in a robot, that's under your control. You can move the camera as and when you want. You can get it closer to your vision, further from your vision, and that's all under your control. So you're not all the time struggling with your assistants. And definitely the instrument hampering is there because the fulcrum is much higher up. In robotics, you have the wrist, which is much lower down, so it's like your hand, it's like the wrist of your hand, whereas the fulcrum for laparoscopic surgery is higher up, so you have to really be trained well and not to be struggling with laparoscopy. And again, tremors are amplified during laparoscopy, whereas you have a tremor cancelling system on robotic surgery, so even if the older you get, your wrists which move or your fingers which move cancel the tremor on a robotic platform. So we have the robotic surgeon sitting comfortably, his control, his wrist control, the finger control, the foot control, so everything is under your control. And you have the instrument which is docked nicely somewhere away from you. You don't keep on. So as I said, that your surgeon is sitting comfortably, arms rested, peering into the screen, and then you have your fingers moving, your arms comfortable, your foot pedals moving, and you have the robo docked somewhere away, and you're not all the time removing instruments, putting instruments behind, because you have 2 or 3 instruments that you use, and the camera port, which is a stable port. So I think it is superior because of the 3D vision, though the laparoscopists may say that we have 3D laparoscopy also, but then the 3D vision with this is definitely superior. You have a stable camera which is not moving, you have magnification of 10x or more, and the kind of sophisticated precision surgery that you need to do for gyne-oncology, you have that platform ready for that fine work in which you need good oncological margins. You can do a complete lymphadenectomy very easily. So this is here to stay. And this is again courtesy Dr. Somshekhar that you have I have these pictures here, but and you have this EndoWrist technology. You have a 360-degree movement, you have 7 degrees of movement, and with this tremor cancelling software, so that what you have down there is precision surgery. So we talked about all the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which are superior to the laparoscopic than laparoscopy. And then you have all the other advantages, that is, suturing is as easy as you would do in an open model. You have multitasking, you don't have to keep removing instruments and putting instruments into the ports. You have 3 arms in addition to the camera arm, and also an assistant arm, because a robo has one disadvantage, that you cannot do the suctioning yourself or irrigation yourself. That needs the assistant to do it. So you have an assistant port, and you can easily access both the left and right sides without, you can shift your hands so easily on robotic surgery that you're not struggling with an open surgery or with a laparoscopic surgery. But I think right now the energy source is limited to monopolar cautery, whereas there will be options of using other energy sources. So if you talk about challenges, the challenges are a few, they're not too many, except trying to get in a robo into your institute and start doing robotic surgery. but we have some challenges in surgical training and learning curves. What's the cost of setup? Do we need a large operating room? But I've seen robots even in smaller operating rooms, so I don't think you need to have a new building or a new OT for this purpose. And what is the risk of intraoperative mechanical failure? What happens if you get into trouble? And the need for additionally trained staff is always there for any new instrument, but I think the company people or Vattikuti, once they install it, do train your staff too. And are there any surgical challenges, and what are the outcomes? So I think if you look at the United States, you have more than 2,100 robos as of September 2014. And within 4 years of introduction of the robo, 24% of gynae oncologists had taken to it, and 66% by 5 years. And today, I think when this report was published, 95% of gynae oncology fellows are trained in the use of the robo in the United States. 74% of fellows are trained to perform robotic-assisted lymph node dissection, and 44% radical hysterectomies. This must be much more than what's given here. So the Society of Gynae Oncology Robotic Task Force position statement has acknowledged that robotic surgery has markedly changed the practice patterns in US gynae oncology communities. They've taken much more faster to robotics than they did to laparoscopic surgery. So it's something that we need to see, given the advantages of minimally invasive surgery and the ease for a surgeon of incorporating this superior technology. So actually you have some surgical training and learning before you actually get onto a robo, so maybe some dry lab, some online modules, some exercises on the simulator before you go onto a wet lab, and then you have various simulators that are available. Probably the Da Vinci one with the Mimic technologies is popular. And this is a paper by Dr. Anupama and Dr. Walter Gottlieb, which actually looked at surgical simulation and how soon can a novice replicate that of a senior surgeon who's been doing robotic surgery. So there were 6 sets of skills that were given. And the first time the skilled surgeon sat on the robot, that was his score that was taken. And the novice had that score, which you can see on the second column. And within 6 attempts, the novice was as good as the robotic surgeon in replicating the scores. So yeah, I think it's not just doing those exercises and saying that you're as good as a robotic surgeon, but yes, you can pick up the techniques easily. So there was another learning curve in which Lim et al. Had studied 122 cases of robotic-assisted surgery for endometrial cancer and another 122 of laparoscopic surgery, and they found that the learning, by the time they reached 24 cases, a robotic surgeon was able to, then the operative time stabilized over time, whereas it took about 48 cases for a laparoscopic surgeon to stabilize over time. So it was much earlier for a robotic surgeon. So it's not 6 exercises and you're done with it. It has to be much deeper than that. You have to know the surgical anatomy precisely, because it may even change in malignancy. And a second study noted that proficiency was reached after 20 cases. But a recent study from Memorial Sloan Kettering said that 33 cases are required, and you have to be proficient in laparoscopic, both basic and advanced skills, before a gynae oncology fellow becomes proficient. So it's somewhere between 20 to 40 that you would require to become proficient in gynae oncosurgery. So this was another study which was reported, in which they had 3 cohorts, 1 to 20 cases, then 20 to 40, and 40 and above. And from 183 minutes, the time came down to 152 minutes, and it probably stabilized after that. So you need about 20 to 25 cases of endoscopic endometrial surgery to get proficient in robotics. So is it expensive? I think that's a very, very relative matter, and it's an understated statement because it is expensive. But I think if the institution can afford it, if they can afford laparoscopic surgery, probably they can afford robotic surgery, because over time, gaining surgical expertise, decrease operating time, I'll show you some of these things, of decrease operating time, decrease hospital stay would probably cancel out this initial major costs. So if you look at the cost analysis in the United States, it takes about $1.5 to $1.7 million for the initial maintenance, and maybe $100,000 to $150,000 subsequently per year. And this was a case study in which abdominal hysterectomy costed about $12,000 in 52 patients, and robotic assisted procedures costed $18,000 in the first 30 cases, and subsequently in the last 30 cases it had come down to about $12,000. So they took about 90 cases to break even compared to the surgery compared to open surgery. So it's something that you have to work out and see how it works. So in India, this is somebody I spoke to recently who has a setup at their institute in Amrita Hospital in Cochin. And this was the cost that she said was the initial setup. And then if you do 300 cases per year for 4 years, and you keep your costs maybe 50,000 more than laparoscopic surgery, you can break even. And there are recurring instrument costs, which are about 25,000 rupees per patient. But it comes, they train you in a lab, they train you in a dry lab, in a wet lab, they train the on-site personnel, and there's an engineer present in the OT for any troubleshooting. But eventually, any troubleshooting can probably be done by the internet, because it's always connected to the internet, and you have this internet troubleshooting that is available. So if you look at surgical challenges, this is a picture from my book. Actually, I'm writing a book on uterine cancer, and the 2 chapters on robotic surgery, which are beautiful, are by Dr. Somashekar and Dr. Gottlieb. And this picture is which was given by Dr. Gottlieb. So when you look at obesity, I think the open surgeon really shies away from such a huge patient, because he knows 20-30% of the times it's going to lead to a wound breakdown, a facial dehiscence. The patient is going to be with you for the next maybe 28 days, 30 days, end up with thrombosis and a lot of complications. And again, the laparoscopic surgeon also shies away from such a patient because she's so obese. And definitely we'll look at some studies and look at some statistics in operating on a woman maybe with BMIs more than 40 or more than 45. But robotic surgery, surprisingly, has been easier with robotic surgery to operate on obese women. And let's look at some. So GOG Lab 2 study definitely said that laparoscopy is superior than open surgery in terms of all the other decreased costs and decreased hospital stay. But the caveat was the rate of conversion for women with BMI more than 40 was 57%. So about 60% of the times, if you have a BMI of 40, 45, you might convert it to an open surgery. So that was the caveat. But let's look at robotic surgery. So this was a recent study by Seaman, who looked at both laparoscopic assisted and robotic surgery with a BMI of over 50. And they found that the cancellation, the wound complication rates, major complication rates were significantly less in the robotic assisted arm. And the lymph node count and percentage of patients receiving adequate was similar in both groups. So this is, laparotomy in comparison to robotics. Then coming to, obesity probably can be completed more often in an obese patient than laparoscopy. So I think obesity is one of the challenges which can be overcome by the robo. And again, elderly patients, we are worried about elderly patients either because of the Trendelenburg position and ventilation and so many other comorbidities that exist. But again, in elderly patients too, they found that laparoscopic staging or laparoscopic staging was safe and feasible, so why not robotics? It's a study when this is a laparoscopic study. So the shift to robotic surgery, although laparoscopic procedures have increased, many surgeons may not offer to elderly women or those morbidly obese with comorbidities. In 2010, more than 50% of endometrial cancer staging procedures were robotic-assisted surgery, representing a paradigm shift towards minimally invasive surgery not previously achieved with traditional laparoscopic technique. This is for endometrial cancer and staging. It's not for routine surgery. It is for the shift. Maybe only 20%, 10 or 20% of surgeons in the US did laparoscopic surgery for endometrial cancer. But much more people shifted to robotic surgery. So it allows more patients needing complex or radical surgery to benefit from the robotic approach. So I think there's going to be a paradigm shift in the next few years in people who can acquire a robo, and if you have access to robotic surgery, from open to robotics in patients who need it, especially obese and elderly. So oncological outcomes, the challenge is again the loss of the tactile sense during surgery, but even laparoscopics have overcome that loss of tactile. You may not be able to palpate metastatic tumor that's been there for laparotomy also. Post-site metastasis, there have been some case reports from robotics that even in stage 1 cancers, minimally invasive stage 1 cancers, there were 2 or 3 reports of post-site metastasis. And failure to identify and remove high para-aortic lymph nodes. I think Somsekhar will tell you all how to, because once the third generation robo is docked, it is a little difficult to reach the high para-aortic areas above the inferior mesenteric arteries. But they have overcome it by slight shifting and tilting of the patient. And with the XI robotic platform that is now coming in, when you can dock, you can do multi-quadrant surgery, that's going to be less of a problem. And so these were probably the challenges in oncological outcomes. So this was a study in which 181 patients were analyzed, 105 robotic between 2006 and 8, that is 2 years, 105, and in laparoscopy was done in endometrial cancer over 7 years and only 76 patients. This is the same institute. And the higher BMI was seen in the robotic cohort, which was about 34 versus 29. And blood loss, transfusion rate, laparotomy conversion rates in robotics was about 12% compared to 26% in laparoscopy. Skin to skin time was really high, to 142 minutes versus and the total operating time was about 5 hours. But this was an older study, so probably the learning curve then was higher. And but robotic lymphadenectomy and hysterectomy for endometrial cancer can be accomplished in heavier patients with shorter operating times and a lesser hospital stay. So looking at these operation times, which seem really large, it's 242 minutes, that is almost 4 hours. Look at Somashekhar's study of 25 patients in each group, of prospective randomized study in which he could complete the surgery in 142 minutes, so the 100 minutes less, so I think it varies from surgeon to surgeon. And the mean hospital stay was also just about 2 days, and they get returned to work also much faster. And in fact, the number of lymph nodes that he removed were higher, statistically higher than that was removed in the open surgery arm. Though when you look at it, it doesn't seem that 30 and 27 is much different, but it definitely was superior. So I think the problem with robotics today, because it's some field that has been introduced only in the last few years, is prospective randomized trials. So once we have prospective randomized trials like GOG Lab2 trial, we'll know for better. But this was a small study of Somashekhar, an individual surgeon doing it, and you can see how good he is. So post-site metastasis, these were various studies actually from laparoscopic surgeons. There are no series from robotic surgeons, but I had read of about 2 of them with early stage endometrial cancer, and these had cancer which was confined to the endometrium, no myometrial invasion, and I do not know why they had post-site metastasis. So maybe the smoke or the fumes or the pressures or something that would have led to, or maybe they did not bag the lymph nodes while removal the lymph nodes, but you don't expect the lymph nodes to be involved in even in patients with early stage cancers, or maybe they used a uterine manipulator. I do not know why, but there were port metastases reported. So that's one of the challenge, and I think you'll have to be careful when you remove the specimen. So the future is here. The XI Robo is here. You have 2 consoles. You have so many more advantages. You can train your fellows. You can have an assistant. You can dock, have multi-quadrant docking. So the Da Vinci XI system is the future of robos. You have the 4th generation system that allows a 4-quadrant surgery, improved optics. The overhead boom allows the arms to rotate as a group. It's smaller, lighter arms with extended range of movements, which are less likely to clash. Docking is facilitated by a laser-guided system. A new endoscope does not require draping, calibration, white balancing. So it is significantly lighter and smaller, allowing for an easier setup. However, of course, since it is new, there would be no published data, but it looks like this platform may take robotic surgery for gynae oncology to a new level. And a single port robotic surgery was also introduced, with the instruments being produced by Vespa, some other company. But the number of surgeries that they've done, maybe 17 or 18 surgeries, was not superior to a laparotomy. So that's yet to be seen. So to conclude, it has revolutionized the practice of gynae-oncology. And in cervical, I didn't talk much about cervical, give you a few examples of endometrial because we have people who are actually doing robotic surgery, talking about the precision and the sophistication in which you can do parametrial clearance and unroof the ureter and also do a lymphadenectomy. New technology and refinement of existing platforms will lead to greater potential applications. Cost remains a limitation, but future competition, I wonder if there's a competitor to Da Vinci or to Intuitive, let's see. Use of less disposable equipment and improving surgical expertise is likely to drive the costs down. And fellowship training, especially a structured training, is definitely important, and I think this is imparted to all the gynae-onco fellows in the United States, whereas in India, gynae-oncology as a super specialty has only become recent, which is only about 3 years old, with Tata Memorial Hospital, Kidwai, and Bangalore Medical College having it, in which gynae-oncologists actually are trained, and robotic-assisted surgery definitely has a major role in gynae-oncology, at least in cervix and endometrium, ovary, I'm not too sure. And fertility-sparing surgery like radical trachelectomy and all definitely has a use. Thank you.